it's not about the back-end CDR, but the clinical decision support is part of the openEHR family of open standards based on a thing called Gdl. Over to you, Paul.
Okay, thanks very much, Ian. Good afternoon. It's been really interesting, good talks so far. Great to see so much work going on with openEHR stuff. Really impressed at people doing demos and videos. I'm not doing anything like that. I thought I might put a wee kitten's gif at the end of my presentation, but decided, due to pressures of time, I think we have 15 minutes and 32 slides, that a kitten's gif, well, it would have cheered everyone up, was probably a wee bit superfluous. So we'll rattle on. Ta-da. Good. So anyway, my name is Paul Miller. Hello. I'm a general practitioner. I'm based in Paisley. That's where I work, where I'm a GP. Paisley is beginning to be UK city culture. It's quite a nice city. It's actually more like a big town. Here's some pictures of Paisley. Not as good as kitten gifs, but still. Just to give you an idea of context. And we're going to do a wee bit of background here, first up, just to fill you in, because I think it's important you understand the journey we're on, how we've got to where we are, and the environment in which we're working. So this is Paisley here. Well, it's actually my practice. Pointer on this is that button, is it? So that's Glenburn Community Centre. That's Skye Crescent Post Office. That's an ATM if you're looking for a cash machine. And that's my practice just there, that white building there. And a bit more of Paisley. So we're actually, and this pointer, there-ish. Sorry, down here-ish. There we are. There's the reservoir there, so we're just to the right of the reservoir, just below the Glenaford Braes Country Park, where there's Highland cows, so that's something you can do at lunchtime. And Paisley is just south and west of Glasgow. There's Glasgow there, the big blue dot, and Glasgow sits in Scotland. And the reason I'm saying all that is because Scotland is not an independent country. It's part of the UK. I'm being videoed, so I'm being very careful. This is the UK here. If you've got a colour, you're UK. Republic of Ireland is not UK, which is why it's just grey. No bright colours. And the reason all this is important is because Scotland has devolved government. And indeed, Wales and Northern Ireland also have devolved governments, albeit the Northern Ireland one is currently not functioning. And why that matters is because one of the powers that's devolved entirely to Scottish Parliament, to Scottish Government, is health. Okay? So when you guys are talking today about England NHS or Britain NHS, actually there's not a UK NHS. There are at least 4 versions of the NHS in the UK. Okay? And obviously that's the biggest, the NHS England, the top left, Wales and Welsh. NHS at Northern Ireland seems to call itself the Health and Social Care Directorate, I think, and NHS Scotland. So Scotland, somewhat madly, you might suggest, given that we're 5 million people, divvies itself up into 14 different territorial health boards. This is a management structure. Territorial health boards get all the money, pretty much, for e-health and told to get on with it. Okay? There's also, you thought that was complex, there's also a whole lot of non-territorial boards that do other things like ambulances and health improvement and this kind of thing. And then on top of that, we've got a governance body nationally, which is Scottish Government Health and Social Care Directorate, in essence, which is meant to set strategy and policy and implementation thereof as directed by the politicians. And within the Scottish Health and Social Care Directorate, then there's an e-health body, which is meant to direct the policy and strategy for e-health. So they do that, and they say, this is the strategy, and then they tell the boards, this is the strategy, and boards decide how to spend the money. So that's a bit of a disconnect, but there are some national programs that they can get through, and national things they can get done. So Scotland has a separate health and social care delivery plan. It's not the same as NHS England's. We've got our own clinical strategy, which is actually pretty good if you've not read it. If you're a clinician, it'd be worth looking at. And we're talking here about stuff, realistic medicine. And realistic medicine is the intent to stop giving people who are 120 years old 8 drugs to lower their cholesterol. You know, we've got to talk to our patients about and get good evidence around what actually works. and what they want to do, because too often we're too dictatorial. We say, take all these things because we're medically legally defensive. And sometimes the evidence doesn't entirely back us up. And that's relevant because the topic of this talk is, of course, around decision support. We also have now a new GMS contract, General Medical Services contract. This is a contract under which GPs operate. GPs, of course, are independent contractors to the NHS. So we work with a contract. The NHS pays us money to do stuff. And we deliver services based on the contract. It's a very different contract from NHS England or Wales, Northern Ireland. We've got rid of a thing called QOF, for example, which is a target-based quality and outcomes framework. It's no longer in Scotland. So this contract here is about actually giving to other health professionals like physiotherapists and pharmacists much more responsibility and authority and autonomy to do stuff that actually we're getting bogged down doing. So we can spend our time at doing more complex things and complex care management, undifferentiated diagnoses, and difficult people, that kind of stuff. And if we're going to do all that, then we're going to need to have good decision support. Not just for the GPs, but also for all these other people like the physios and the pharmacists, so they can start to make decisions around stuff more autonomously and safely. So we also have a separate e-health strategy. This e-health strategy, the most current one is 2016. They're doing a new one just now, which they've got an international panel. It seems to me a very prolonged exercise to say stuff that we think we kind of know what they should be saying already, like interoperability and so on. But they have this decision support idea, decision support strategy. It says there will be a decision support thing done nationally. I don't think they quite knew what they meant by that. And the program lead for this is my colleague Anne Wales, who works in Scottish Government. And she's actually doing the lead of the overarching strategy for decision support in Scotland, delivery thereof. And I'm doing the clinical lead part for a little bit of that, which is the primary care aspect of it, via this organisation, SCIMP. So SCIMP is essentially an applied health informatics advisory body to national programmes in NHS Scotland. We're a bunch of GPs and practice managers who have a degree of freedom to innovate and challenge and do some autonomous stuff. So I didn't have to say to my bosses, can I go to openEHR Day today and do a talk, although I maybe should have done now, I realise I'm being filmed. And primarily we work with Scottish Government and NSS, the service body that delivers e-health stuff, so they supply the systems, manage all the contracts, all that kind of stuff. Okay, where are we? So, decision support. We started working up, Anne Wales particularly started working up what are the requirements for decision support, what is it we're going to need to deliver in the strategy. And she's fantastic. She's done an incredible amount of research and background reading and came up with a lot of stuff that just started to crystallize the picture of what we needed. And she talks quite well around having these kind of three pillars of the knowledge base, the patient data, something that can analyze that data, and something on top, applications to actually let us do stuff and get decision support delivered. And this is from our roadmap, high-level requirements documentation. Look at the words that came out. System agnostic, common platform, open standards-based architecture. Because we can't do decision support nationally if we have everything locked in and proprietary, if we have a supplier that can't extend to social care, for example, or key workers in patients' houses, and all these multiplicity of additional people are going to be delivering care on behalf of the NHS. And we wanted this, multiple devices, lots of people, lots of places. And these kind of talks are never complete without an architecture diagram. Actually, there's a more recent version of this architecture diagram than this one. I couldn't find it for you, which is a shame because over time, Anne has evolved this, and this now reads service-orientated architecture at that level, and I think she's taken that grey blob there and moved it up as well, so it's standing on its own. So that's good stuff. But where are we? Just now, platform and the picture of decision support in primary care at any rate. Looks a bit like this. We've got a lot of systems. They do what they're meant to do, I think. They're largely informational. So they say, here's a guideline, which isn't much used to often, which be a patient in front of you. What we want is intelligent decision support that prompts us, tells us, guides us. And some of these products do some of that. That's EMIS Mentor at the top, that's Vision Plus Bluebay underneath. Some apps around what antibiotics to prescribe, how to establish sepsis risk, that kind of stuff. And in the primary care environment at the moment, we've got two clinical system providers. We've got EMIS, who provide their product called PCS, which is actually a more kind of legacy product now, and Vision, who prescribe their product now called Vision, previously a company known as INPS. And that's great, that's fine. We've got two proprietary providers. We've had them a long while. And just as we are starting to look at procuring national decision support, how we're going to get that working, how we're going to get it working in primary care, the GP contracts for the GPIT contracts all expired. They're expiring now, so we're undergoing a reprovisioning exercise in NHS Scotland to procure new general practice primary care systems. So that's ongoing at the moment. That's the objective of that. So that makes that a little tricky for us. Nevertheless, these are the very, very high-level requirements for you of what we did when we did our procurement. We said we want all these things, which I've shown you already. And on the back of that, we said, and to do that, when we get that in place, what we're actually going to do is a pilot, first of all. And we're going to put that pilot into primary care, into general practice, because we know that's the place where there's most data-rich environment, where you can, we've got GPs who are all using clinical systems anyway on their desktops, generally speaking. So that's, I think, a sensible thing to do. And that was part of the procurement spec as well. So whoever wanted, whatever company succeeded in this was going to have to deliver all these 6 things there, and is also going to have to do a pilot for us. So we approached that with some trepidation, thinking, there's not really anywhere. We weren't very confident about finding a supplier who could actually deliver on that stuff, because that is not how decision support has been delivered. It's delivered in a very proprietary way to date. But when we actually went to market, we did find Cambio. I think Henrik and Vakas are here today from Cambio. And we found that Cambio actually would meet pretty much all the requirements, potentially. So that was good. And I was pleased as we went through the procurement with my colleagues, who are, I'm a clinical informatician really, but these guys are practicing jobbing GPs who were just trying to give clinical input to it. We went through procurement, we saw all these products, and they went, Cambio is the one we want, just because they could see the open nature of it and the interoperability nature of it. So this is how things, other companies seem to want to do things. And we were going to get this decision support program software in place. And we were going to have to integrate with all these other APIs. We're going to have to do all this work. So the onus would be on us over here as NHS Scotland, doing all that interfacing work across multiple systems. And we thought, that's not good, tenable for us. We don't want that to happen. What we want to happen is this. And that's why we're talking about openEHR today and around decision support, because of this middleware translation layer. And we're using openEHR as the translation. So systems will shove out their data, map onto openEHR, consumed by Cambio, and then return back via apps, the decision support itself, or maybe Fire. I wasn't sure whether to include that at this talk. Okay, the other thing that Cambio gives us is it gives us this GDL, Guideline Definition Language, which is, again, an open, open source specification for writing guidelines. So taking knowledge, that knowledge base, translating it into actual algorithms that can then be computed. And we like that for the reason, just because it was open, so it's an open standard, so we can write our own stuff. Cambio can write stuff for us. We can hand it over to SMEs maybe in due course, let them write stuff for us. And then when and if we say, oh no, we don't like Cambio anymore, but I'm sure that'll never happen, we could take all our stuff and give it to someone else. We're not dependent on the code. The code isn't being held by anyone. The knowledge isn't being trapped in proprietary stuff. I'm just going to rattle through this, I'm aware of time. The other thing we get is a Gdl Editor, which I've only looked at very briefly. But again, that's under a Mozilla public license. So this stuff still needs development. I think it needs work. But I think the value, it is functional as it is, but the value is, from our perspective, is that we should be able to, if NHS Scotland can get to grips with this, develop and encourage development thereof. to meet our requirements. So again, we're not dependent on suppliers to say, do this for us, and they go, well, it's £1 million, which is where we're at with a lot of our systems at the moment. The other thing that it uses is a technology called CDS hooks, which I actually only became aware of yesterday. Hadn't heard of it before, but CDS hooks is if you're not aware of it, it's got a website. It's an open source integration engine, I think, for getting CDS applications linked up with your, yeah, you're nodding like I'm talking sense, that's good. Linked up with your clinical data. Okay. So where are we now? Did we get that? Well, let's hope so. The signs are good, the omens are good. I think we're working well together at the moment, but it's very early days. We got that, we got that, we got that, we got that. And we got that, potentially, because all this stuff needs to be built. It's like buying a toolkit, really. And of course, this is new for NHS Scotland. This is new for us, because it's not how we do things. But you see the process we went to, gathering requirements, doing the analysis, saying the only way to do this is with this kind of platform. This is a procurement. Who can do this? One company could do it for us. So it's new, which means it's challenging to explain to my colleagues and in eHealth and across all these 14 health boards and different non-territorial boards and Scottish Government. So there's lots of challenges in actually delivering this. The two big ones are probably that one, which is time. My Mickey Mouse watch, but it's time. Okay, because people want product now. We want it out now, and we can do the pilot probably. How are we for time, Ian? We can do the pilot probably quite quickly, maybe in a couple of years. But actually delivering in the bigger vision, that's a long-term game. That's 5, 10 years, maybe 12 years. You know, the people who are in charge of eHealth don't get that longevity. The clinicians, I think, do. But that's how long it's going to take us. And the other big one that we're going to struggle with, I think, is this one. Because we're trying to do iterative, agile development of apps across a multiplicity of small, medium-sized enterprises. Single developers in their garages writing apps on behalf of NHS Scotland or particular organisations. And all these apps are considered medical devices and will get bottlenecked with this. So I'm not sure how we are going to handle that. But that's not just a problem for us. So next steps are to do the pilots. We're going to do polypharmacy. We're going to do frailty and chronic pain. These are big areas, but I mean, they are working with the guys at Cambio to wrong particularly to kind of narrow those down into actually practical implementations, because you can't do the whole of chronic pain in a pilot. You can't do the whole of polypharmacy in a pilot. But doing things like numbers needed to treat, so you can have that shared decision-making with patients, we can do. And we need to make sure it worked. So that's the vision. Much more to say about that particularly. I said most of it. I like the help develop GDL, I think, is something that is in the back of my mind, but we haven't maybe as yet managed to articulate it completely to the programme. But it's such early days for the programme, I think that's okay. So this is what it feels like. It feels like we're treading out into a wild frontier. We're aware there's annoyed natives, so we're going to bribe them with whiskey, maybe some coin. There's angry bears, so we're probably just going to shoot them. We know there's a long journey across dangerous mountains, but we are pretty convinced at the end of it there's some treasure. Thank you very much.
So